Content warning. This episode contains sensitive content surrounding racial violence that may be triggering and not suitable for some listeners.
What's up? You are now listening to Americanized, a storytelling podcast where you'll hear from eclectic first and second generation Americans share their stories and real life experiences as children of immigrants. Hey there, this is your host Rosalind. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Americanized. In part one of this two-part episode, you'll hear from our special guest, Phil Holland. Phil Holland is a first-generation American from Ivory Coast, and he's a father to his beautiful daughter. Phil Holland reached out to me to share his story on surviving police brutality while delivering pizza on the job in 2014. Now, just think about that. Delivering pizza, you are on the job and you become involved in this violent police act. This reminds me of the notion that Black people cannot drive, cannot run, cannot work, cannot exist while being Black without facing some sort of discrimination or racism. So when Phil shared some details of his story in his initial message to me, I was heartbroken. I was in shock. I had no words. I just had a lot of feelings, but no words. I was just really in shock. And I wanted his story to be heard on this platform. I wanted you to hear his story. So Phil Holland survived police brutality. There's a reason why. He recently started sharing his story in hopes of bringing awareness and inspiring others on this issue. So please stay tuned and listen to his story. You start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, I am 27 years old right now, but I was born in Ivory Coast in Africa, and a lot of people don't know that about me. Because, they can't tell. People listening probably couldn't tell until I said it. But I am African, Ivorian to be specific. And I moved here. The reason I don't sounded because I moved here when I was 3. So I've been here for 24 years now. So I'm pretty much Americanized. But I'm still very in touch with my roots and all that. I speak French, read, write, and speak French. And I have a daughter. She turned 3 on the 17th, so about like a couple weeks ago. And that's more or less where my life is at. Like I just started school 2 weeks ago and I just started working again. Not for the first time, but like working. I was working last year bartending before the pandemic hit. So now I'm just kind of not getting back on my feet, but just getting back to normalcy in terms of, just being busy and doing different things and not being in the house all the time. So.
All right, that's important. Well, happy birthday to your daughter.
Thank you.
That's exciting. And what part of Ivory Coast were you born in?
It's called Abidjan.
Oh, the capital.
Yeah.
So, one of the capitals. There's 2.
I don't really know, to be honest.
That's so funny. I don't meet many Ivorians, so when I do, it's this cool thing. All my family's back there.
Oh yeah. Oh okay.
Yeah, my older sister, she came over with my parents when she was 1.5. So she's been in America for a while, then she moved back maybe 5 years ago. Yeah, so I was born in America. All my siblings were all Americanized too.
Yeah.
So what was your upbringing like with coming from Ivory Coast at such a young age?
I feel like I had a pretty normal upbringing. Like I said, I got here when I was 3, so I didn't really have much adjusting to do because I was a baby. My mom was the one that really had to adjust, having been in Africa for 20 years, or 22 years. So me, I was, I grew up normally, didn't have any bad experiences. I liked school, didn't have bullies like a lot of people do. I was, not popular in in the jock sense or whatever, but I knew a lot of people in high school. Still talk to a lot of them to this day. And I don't really have any complaints about my childhood, really. It was pretty normal and good.
Mm-hmm. Did you remember having any conversations about race growing up?
No, I didn't have any of those conversations, not because obviously it didn't exist or that police brutality wasn't an issue, because obviously it's been one for much longer than a lot of people realize. But for me specifically, I did not have any conversations like that. My mom, like I said, she was from Africa, so she probably wasn't as aware as we all are now. Like a lot of us weren't back then. But I, what I learned, how I learned about these things before it became mainstream, as far as police brutality, was just from watching the news. You would see not just people getting shot by cops, but you would see, and living in Philly, that's, not to say Philly is the worst place ever, but, it's kind of common there. uh, I saw, not saw, but would see in the news people getting shot for one reason or another, getting killed, and that's just everywhere. So me, I was not paranoid, but I was always careful to, like, I never really got into fights. I only got into one fight, and that was like I think fifth grade or something. But I never got into any fights. I was pretty late, and I'm kind of too laid back to fight. Like I don't really, I'm a laid back person, so it wasn't an effort that I had to make to get along with people and not get into trouble. I never really got into trouble. So, and even the police experiences that I had before, this one, I think it was like twice. Neither of them were negative, and the police were nice to me, and they were, normal. So, you know, that's what I would say.
I feel like the conversation and perspective on cops has shifted for obvious reasons. And especially during the pandemic when everyone was quarantined, we just saw that on the news all the time. All the police violence. So I feel like a lot of, especially people of color, our perspective and, the conversations we have on police and those injustices are like we're more conditioned to have negative feelings toward them.
And it's unfortunate, but it's not for no reason. I mean,
Right.
obviously, gone. And uh, I just started, like I said, I started school 2 weeks ago, and I'm learning more about U.S. history more than I learned before. And I mean, I knew it already, but I can see now that police brutality is just part of a much bigger issue.
hmm It's a race war, and then it's also a war of power because they're not all cops are white.
But yeah, like to your point, sometimes it's the power that it gives them. They feel like they can do whatever they want,
hmm
and obviously we've seen that they can. And as far as your point about it being a power struggle, not to say all Republicans are against it or are for it, but there's a reason why Republicans, which are mostly made up of white older men that are more into the status quo of systemic racism and all that, there's a reason why they literally sit there and vote for police to be able to do their jobs without any legal repercussions or without any, like, they don't want the government in the way, basically. Especially libertarians, they want police and other people, but also police, to be able to, I don't want to say run wild, but to be able to do what they've been doing, and they feel like it's okay. And the reason why some of them feel like it's okay, because it's disproportionately against Black people or people of my skin color. So there's a reason for that. And like I said, I don't have time to get into all that because it's a long history of it, but it goes back and it's way deeper than a lot of people think or realize.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was recently pulled over a few weeks ago for driving slow. I wasn't even speeding. I was driving slow and I was like still conditioned like something bad is going to happen when I get pulled over just because of what I see on the news.
Right.
It's like that conditioning it's really, it does something to your mind and your mentality.
Especially because when you see these people, they're all normal people like me and you. And me, before that happened and now, I was a normal person and I didn't have a record, don't have anything, was in the streets, you know, didn't do anything to deserve that. Not that anybody deserves it. Let me take that back. Didn't do anything to, I guess, bring it upon myself or to attract attention to myself for that to happen. And it still happened. So that tells you that it can really just happen to anybody. And white people too. I'm not going to act like it's never happened to a white person. But from what I've seen, I've seen several Instagram and Facebook videos of white people not only not doing anything, but some of them are like they're. Or I've seen white people sit there and, like, they have machetes they're swinging them at the cops, and there's no, like, the cops are able to take them down without shooting them. One guy was like literally putting his hands on an officer, and he was tased and detained. And I've never seen a video of a black person so much as like almost swing on a cop and being taken down fairly as they should. And people want to deny that there's a difference in the majority of how black people are treated by cops. And that's another thing that I'm irritated about, that people deny it. Or if they don't, they'll say that, oh, well, he must have done something to bring that upon himself. For example, George Floyd, they say he was something like, or well, he had fentanyl in the system or whatever. Like, that's an excuse to be killed the way he was. Or randomly, they'll bring up how he did porn in the past. I don't know if that's true or not, but I saw that a lot. And I'm just like, how is that relevant to what happened to him and why it happened? Like, I believe he was just, I don't know, I forget what he was doing. But even if he was hurting somebody, everybody has their due date in court, right? And so I was raised to believe that there is judges in the Supreme Court and courts for that. Police aren't the ones that sit there and decide on the spot whether somebody should die, whether somebody should, be beaten up, if that, or be shot in the back 6 times like Jacob Blake was. I think it was 7. Police aren't executioner, judge and jury and all that stuff. And yet they have been, and it seems like there's a lot of people that support that or see no problem with that. And that's a problem in and of itself, beyond, below even a bigger problem than that.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said that, because I never thought about it that way, that they feel they have the power to execute someone over nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's allowed.
And the thing is, they do, because they do it, and then they get paid leave, don't even get arrested. If they do, they're let out the next day or the next week or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, they do have that power. It wasn't given to them, but it's allowed. And so therefore, they have it. And I don't know what the answer to that is, how to fix it. I do, but it's just like, ideas that anybody could have. But, I don't have the answers. I just have my story. And I share it because, for one, among other reasons, it's an example of how you don't really have to be a criminal to be racially profiled or attacked by cops. You don't have to have been doing anything or to be a bad person, even to be, to be in a situation that we've seen so many times. Not to say that because I wasn't like that I survived. Who knows why I did. But for other people, for example, Philando Castile, that's one person. He was in the passenger seat and his daughter was in the back seat. I don't know if you remember this one. This is one that sticks to my mind a lot. I think it was his girlfriend recorded it. And he told the cop he had a gun in the what do you call it? I don't know why it's escaping me, but he had a gun in his car, and the cop told him to take it, to get it out, but then he still got shot anyway. Even after he was telling the person that I'm about to take it out, I'm going to show you, and I'm registered and all that stuff. You can see the cop sitting there shaking, scared for no reason, and he gets shot in front of his daughter and girlfriend. Regardless of whether he has something on his record or not, he didn't deserve that. And I'm sure he was a good person. If he wasn't, whatever, he didn't deserve that. So that's one example. I have plenty more, but I'm not going to, go into all of them. But like I said, you don't have to, for people that are listening that think that, everybody that this has happened to, you don't have to be a bad person or have been doing anything to bring this on yourself or for it to happen to you, I should say.
Mm-hmm. It's just like pure heartlessness. And to them, like, we don't have to be a bad person, but because we are black, everything else is assigned to us. Like, crime is assigned to the color black. So, like you're saying, we don't have to be a bad person or do bad things or have a record. The only thing we do have to be is black.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let you tell your story again. I don't know how triggering it is for you. I know you've shared it a number of times.
It's not triggering at all. Like you said, I've shared it plenty of times by now. Even before I started talking to people about it on podcasts and all that, about it. care to do it publicly because I did want to, but there were reasons I wanted to be private. I didn't want to be out there. I, I didn't want to get anything out of it. And I still don't. It's just, after the pandemic happened and I saw George Floyd happen and the protests and the riots and all that. And then I saw Jacob Blake and then Walter Wallace in October. George Floyd was the one that, and I was in the house all day like everybody was due to the pandemic. And I just started thinking like, I just need to start sharing this story because everybody always tells me this is a story that needs to be heard. And it's not really it's not really about letting people know what happened. It's more so about, the impact that it may have, whether it's somebody that looks like me, or whether it's somebody that is white and believes the wrong things, like how cops cannot make mistakes or they can do no wrong. It's for anybody who will be impacted by it or who will learn from it.
Right. When you say that, I think of the hashtag silence is violence. So you're like putting an end to that.
That's kind of also like for me to be silent and have this story while I'm watching it. And that's kind of why I'm ashamed that I just started sharing it last year. Actually 6 months ago, not even really last year technically, but 6 months ago. I just started sharing it. I've been watching it happen for the past 6 years. Eric Garner was the first of the long line of it being publicly videoed or it being in the news. Besides Trayvon Martin, but that wasn't really a police thing. That was more so, vigilant or whatever he was, neighborhood watch, whatever. But as far as police-related killings, Eric Garner was kind of the first that was very public, and he died. And that was in June 2014 or July 2014. And mine was in April. So when mine happened, we didn't really see it that way because me and my mom didn't really know or were aware that police were doing this like that. And so when it happened, I didn't know that that's what it was until I started seeing it. And then the years went by, and I kept seeing it. And by the time I saw Michael Brown, I realized what it was. And I was obsessed with this case specifically, but I kept watching it happen. And, I was never triggered. I never was more triggered than anybody else, but I was still thinking like, this happened to me and I survived. And why are all these people dying? And I guess it's not that George Floyd was a tipping point. It was also the fact that I had time to think about whether I should share this story or not. And I didn't take time to think about it, take long to think about it. It was just kind of like, it's long overdue for me to start talking about this publicly and have people learn from it or, take what they will from it. Hopefully positive, but be it positive or negative, whatever.
Mm-hmm. It is really brave of you to do that, to like step out and be open about it. Because, like you said, there's a reason why you survived this, and this is part of like what you're doing with that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is yet, but I feel like I don't think I survived that just to not talk about it ever again or to never tell it. Especially considering, like I said, it happened before me, but to keep seeing it happening, like there's no way that I survived to just sit there and like live life normally and not talk about it. And exactly. I want, but at the same time, that's not exactly the cards I was dealt, like a normal life, so to speak. So at least in terms of that was normal. So, but I don't want to keep rambling. I'll get into the story if you're ready.
Yeah, I'll just tell you to take your time, take a deep breath, and the floor is yours.
So this happened April 22nd, 2014. I was delivering pizza at the time. Well, that day specifically was a normal day. I was working 2 jobs and delivering pizza was one of them. And I was taking 1 class or 2 classes. One was online, but I was taking the public speaking class. And I would go to work in the morning, work in the airport at a bakery. I go to class afterwards, and then I go to my second job, the pizza job, at 5:00. And that was 5 to 11. And so it was the last order of the day. And it actually wasn't even my turn to go because we would rotate because we had like 2 to 3 drivers each day, depending on how busy it was. And so that day we had 3 drivers. It wasn't my turn to go, but the person whose turn it was said that I could go because he didn't really care to because the day was almost over. It was about 10:30. So I went out, got there about 10:45, and I delivered a cheeseburger to an older lady. and I was walking off her porch, and that's when this whole thing kind of started. I'm walking off her porch, and I see a car swerving at the top of the block, and they're like doing donuts, kind of like Fast and Furious. Like you can see all the smoke, and you can hear it, like they're swerving, like just going in circles. No idea what that was about or why they were doing that. But when I saw that, me to being a delivery driver in Philadelphia, like anything can happen. Like I'm trying to be careful. That's why I was parked normally. I wasn't double parked. Like my lights weren't on. I parked normally because I don't want to bring attention to myself in any way because it's nighttime. And I have about $400 in my pocket. So I'm just like, all right, let me get out of here before I get approached negatively in some way by who knows who. Or yeah, God knows who. So I got in my car. I'm seeing this at the top of the block, and I'm like, all right, let me get in my car and get out of here. And so I get in my car, and when you know how you open the car door and you see the lights come on, even after you close the door, it's not until you turn the car on that the lights go off. So I turn the car on, the lights are on, and while the lights are on, I see one person in the sidewalk, approach me, and I don't see what he's wearing exactly, but I see he's wearing all I see is all black. And so he shines a flashlight in my face, and I kind of block it with my right hand. And when because I'm blocking the light with my right hand, I kind of see the person on the left, and the person in the street to my left, he, I can see him pull a gun out, and I can make the gun out clearly. And so, I don't know if you're familiar with fight or flight, but when you're in danger, it could be animals, humans, all that stuff. We all have that. When you're in danger, it's either you fight the danger or you get the hell out of there. So me being a human being, I can't fight a gun or a bullet. So I put the car in reverse. And it might sound like what I just said and what I'm about to say, it might sound like it happened within like 5 minutes, but it was really about 10 seconds. Not even that. It was like all really short, like happened in a flash. But I see these two people approaching me, and I feel like I'm about to get robbed, which is why obviously I reacted like that. Like I put the car in reverse. I didn't hit the car in front or behind me. I don't know how, but that's not important. But put the car in reverse and got out of there to try to get out the spot before I'm shot. And like while I'm moving forward, I start seeing like the guns go off, like the muzzle flash go off. And I can hear the gunfire, obviously. So I duck so as to not get hit in the head, obviously, and get killed. And when I duck, I put my head down to duck and try to get out of there. I feel one bullet pierce my thigh, and it went clean through, and it kind of hit my left leg a little bit, but it didn't go through that. But it hit my right leg, went clean through, and I winced. I didn't feel any pain. The pain came when I was in hospital for the next 2 weeks. But I didn't feel any pain in that moment. People always ask me what it felt like to get shot. It felt, but it wasn't painful. Like I didn't feel anything. I just felt it. And the reason why I didn't feel it was because right after I winced about, once I felt that bullet pierce me, I passed right out. Didn't know why. What woke me up was like 5 seconds later, me crashing into a fence down the street from where I was just at. And what wakes me up is like the glass around me breaking and everything. And, I'm jolting up, and my face is very wet, but I don't know why. But I can't really see anything too much. I just hear glass breaking, and I'm just like groggy for a minute. And then about, I don't know how long, probably a couple seconds later, somebody opens my door, my driver's side door, and they say, police, police, freeze. And me not knowing what the hell just happened, except I just got shot by who knows. I just start saying it because I'm kind of in shock, but I'm also very aware of what just happened. I just start saying, I just got shot. Please, somebody just shot me. I just kept saying that over and over. I just got shot. And the cop that opened the door, he says, no shit, Sherlock. And he takes me out the car. And I didn't have time to think about why he would say that. But I just kept saying it. Like, I just got shot. Like somebody really just shot me. He takes me out the driver's seat and puts me on the ground, and kind of reminiscent of George Floyd, not to say it was 8 minutes or whatever. It wasn't 7 minutes. It was only about 15, 20 seconds while he was handcuffing me. But he put me on the ground on my stomach while I'm bleeding out my leg and my face. He says he arrests me, puts handcuffs on me, and he has his knee on my back while he's doing this. And I can feel that. And I don't have time to think about what the hell is going on. Like, why am I being arrested after getting shot? All I know is I just got shot. But he puts me on the ground of the cop car. I can remember being on the ground because in most cars there's a little ridge on the floor of the car because that's where the middle of the car is, where the compartment is. So I can feel my midsection on the ridge of the floor of the car, and I can see a little bit. And so I wasn't even in the seat; I was on the floor of the car. They're the ones that took me to the hospital because obviously the people that had shot me were the cops that had just took me out the car, and they took me to the hospital. And I passed out shortly after I got put in the car. And I don't want to say I give them credit for that because obviously they were the ones that gave me the reason to go to the hospital. But if they wanted to kill me, they could have easily let me sit there and bleed out. But they took me to the hospital. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody else did. Maybe backup came and they took me. I don't know. I was out. But I think they took me to the hospital. I'm pretty sure. So what woke me up after I passed out on the floor of the cop car was, you know, I'm in the ER and the doctors are like kind of cutting because they don't have time to unbuckle me and zip me down and pull my pants off. They were just cutting my pants off so I could, they could get to the bullet in my leg or get to the injury. And so I jolted up because the feeling of like the wind or the air hitting, my area, it kind of woke me up. I remember like it was yesterday, like that just jolted me up. And I'm kind of looking around. I can't see too well, but I kind of see a lot of lights and I see people moving back and forth. And I can kind of tell I'm in the ER or the hospital or whatever. And the doctor sees me wake up and, he gets to me. He's like, "Hey, are you okay?" Not literally, obviously I'm not, but he just trying to see where I'm at mentally. And so he asked me, what's my name? And for somebody that just been shot the way I was, and I'll tell you how in a minute, not just the leg, but he asked me, "What's my name?" I said, "Phil Holland." He said, "Do you know what year it is?" And I answered the question like 2014. Do you know who the president is? I said, Barack Obama. And then he was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, and that's where I went back to the whole shot thing. I was like, it flashed back. I was like, I just got shot. Somebody just shot me. And he says, "We know we're gonna do our best. We're gonna work on you. You'll be okay." And I was just like, I just got shot. Like, I couldn't believe it. I remember I kept saying it like I was in shock. And it wasn't until he asked me, do I have anybody that he can call, like a family member or somebody close to me? And so my mom had moved to New Jersey a year ago before this happened. And she wanted me to go with her. Obviously I was her son, but I was, 19 going on 20. I was 19 at the time. So I was just like, I figured it's a good time to just live by myself. She left me her house that we were in and not to get roommates because the rent was a lot. And I only had one job. And that's part of the reason why I got a second job. But, she left me the house and I got some roommates. My girlfriend moved in shortly after. And so that was the situation when I got shot. And so my mom was in New Jersey. And when he asked if I had anybody to call, obviously my mom, who that's almost my best friend, I thought of her. And then I started like panicking. That's when the second thought started coming in. Okay, I just got shot. Now, am I about to die? Because like, I don't know what's going on. All I know is I can't really see. I can feel my leg kind of pulsating a little bit, but I don't know how bad that is. I just started crying and I'm losing a lot of blood. And so me crying and I started panicking because I felt like I was about to die. So I started crying and like, getting like, panicking. And so that me expending energy, panicking and crying kind of made me pass out right after that. And so I had her number in my head, but I didn't give it because I just started panicking. So I passed out again. And what ended up happening was my girlfriend or one of my girlfriend's friends girlfriend at the time, who I'm still friends with now, she saw it on the news and she was at work and one of her friends said, "Hey, your boyfriend's on the news. Like he just got shot." Not like that, but telling her. And I guess, I don't know if she saw it or I don't know exactly what happened, but she called my mom and my mom was asleep. She called my mom and she said, "Miss Odette, Phil just got shot." I don't know how she said it, but this is just how I talk. But she said, Phil just got shot. And my mom she told me the story, not all the time, but she told me multiple times. She thought that she was joking for whatever reason. And so she kind of hung up and went back to sleep. And my girlfriend called her back and she was like, "Miss Odette," crying this time. She's like, "Miss Odette, Phil's in the hospital. He just got shot. He's on the news, et cetera, et cetera." So my mom kind of jolted up when she heard all that and, woke my stepdad up, her husband, woke him up and said, to explain to him what was going on. I wasn't there obviously, so I don't know how it went. But I say this because the worst part of this entire story for me is, I say this all the time. The worst part is, the fact that my mom had to drive, because when she started driving to go to Philly, she's in New Jersey. So it's about where she was, it was about an hour and 20 minutes, maybe an hour and a half. And hour and a half isn't really a long time, depending on what you're talking about. But in this case, she drove an hour and a half. She called the hospital. All they were able to tell her was that I've been shot in the leg and in the face. And they couldn't tell whether I would survive or not. They were working on it. They tried to assure her, but they couldn't promise and say he's going to be okay. Like, you can't do that. And then I died during surgery. And then, my mom's going to be extra pissed because you told me he'd be okay. So all they could do is, say he got shot in the femoral artery and the face. We're going to do the best we can. And so, when you hear that somebody's been shot in the face, you think that there's going to be a hole in their face, or they're going to have brain damage, or they're not going to look the same, or whatever. And so my mom had to drive an hour and a half, not knowing, first of all, whether I was alive or dead or not. But even if I am alive, I'm not even going to be the same. Or so she thought. I'm not even going to be the same at all. Like, I'm going to have a hole in like I just said, hole in my face, or what, it disfigured or whatever. Not that she cares like that, because she's going to love me, but it's just like, you don't want that for your child. And so driving an hour and a half, not knowing what the hell I'm about to walk into, is he going to be dead when I get there? It's just like, when I think about that, it breaks my heart. And this is before I had a daughter. You don't have to have a kid to imagine how hard that is for a parent, driving that amount of time, wondering what she's about to see or what's going to happen to her son. But, that's how she got the news, and she drove down. And so I woke up in the ICU, and my mom was standing over me. This is about a day and a half later. I was out for about a day and a half after they did surgery. Now, the surgery, they fixed my face. I got shot in the face, by the way. I got hit between my eye and nose, and it entered my face, bounced around, and got lodged in my cheek. And it kind of damaged my right eye a little bit, like the bone, the occipital bone, and that's the bone that holds the eye up in place. That kind of broke because the bullet shattered it. And so my eye was kind of drooping down, like it sunk a little bit. And I've had surgery to fix it since then, but that's what it was at the time. And so I didn't know I'd been shot in the face until I woke up, and my mom told me. But that was the reason why when I crashed into the fence, I couldn't see anything. My face was wet because I had been shot in the face. And that's the reason why I passed out after I got hit in the leg, because I got hit in the face right after. And so I didn't know that because it knocked me out immediately. I don't know why it didn't pierce my brain and just kill me. Thank God. But it knocked me out. So I wasn't aware that I'd been shot in the face until I woke up. So I wake up in the ICU, and I have a tube down my throat, and I can't really see because my eye is very swollen, but I can kind of open my right eye up a little bit and see a little bit. So I can see my mom standing over me, but I can't talk because I have a tube in my throat from, I have to be fed intravenously because I'm, not in a coma, but I'm out unconscious for a while, for a day and a half. So I couldn't talk. So, my mom was telling me this is when I found out that it was cops that shot me. I didn't even know that until she told me too. So she kind of caught me up on everything, like cops, it was police. Because when she walked into the hospital, the police chief was there, and he told her that, the cops were responding to shots in the area, and that they saw me, and that I matched the description of the person they were looking for. Now, the description of the person was a black man, obviously, who was wearing a black hoodie, and he was 6'5". Now, I'm black, to you, obviously. I am black, and I was wearing a hoodie. I had a button down under it, but it got cold. And in Philly, it's almost always cold, except in the summertime, like for 4 months, and then it's cold again. And so I was wearing a hoodie. But I'm 5'5". I'm not 6'5". I'm like 5'6" on my best day. Even that, like, is stretching it. I'm 5'5". So I matched it in terms of like my race and what I was wearing, but I was nowhere near tall enough to be 6'5", or to be even mistaken for 6'5". But the cops, the police chief said, they thought that I was the suspect. Which, if I was, that didn't mean I deserved to get mowed down like that. Because for all they know, I could have been somebody walking out their house to go to the store to get some milk or something. Like, they didn't know who I was. But they approached me the way they did. And so when I hear that, I'm just like, I start kind of crying, and it's a combination of sadness and anger. Like, crying because I'm just like, this happened for no reason. Then, like I just got shot in the face for nothing. And then also, I start thinking, kind of not irrationally, but I start thinking about how I'm missing work. I'm missing school. Like basketball zone, I can't even watch that because I'm a huge NBA fan since years now. So I'm just like, angry. And I was a real asshole. Excuse my language. I was a real pain in the hospital. Like I was very unpleasant because I was not bitter, but like just angry about the whole situation. But my mom caught me up, and so the first 2 3 days before the tube was taken out, I asked the nurse for a dry erase board or something to write on, and he gave me a dry erase board and a marker. And I couldn't really see too well, so I was kind of writing blind, just asking questions on the dartboard on the dry erase board, like why did they shoot me? That's when I asked, like, where in the face did I get shot? How do I look? Things like that. And then after that, I started asking about the game, like who won the Rockets Blazers game because the Rockets and the Blazers were playing. I was asking who won the game last night, just stuff like that. And my mom kind of got irritated because I was asking about basketball when she was like, "You just got shot in the face, dude. Like, what are you talking about?" But I mean, so I was in the hospital for 1 week, and then I went to a rehab facility down the street for another week. So I was in the hospital or in hospice care for about exactly 14 days. And while I was in the hospital, the first indication that I got that this was like, it was an accident in a way, but the first indication that I got that police were not all police, but that this was one of those cases. Whereas I was in the hospital and my friends, a lot of people came to visit me in the hospital, friends, family. Some people flew from out of state to come see me because they heard what happened. And a lot of people told me they heard about it through the news. And they showed me pictures of it. And Meek Mill had put me on his Twitter and everything. So I Googled my name to see what was being said or whatever. And I see in the news articles that the cops are saying that I tried to run them over. I had my hoodie up, which I didn't. And I tried to run them over even after they announced themselves, which was not true because it was a quiet night. I would have heard the word police. I would have heard that because my car wasn't even on yet. Like I told you, I didn't turn the car when the lights were on. So if they had, said police freeze or shown badges or anything like that, I would have froze because I had nothing in my car but some mail and a pizza bag. No drugs. I wasn't on drugs, wasn't drunk or anything like that, obviously. So no reason to hide from cops. Even if I did, I wouldn't because not that I knew they'd shoot me, but I just wouldn't. Like, why run? And so I see that they're a hood up and that I've tried to run them over. And I'm just like, are you serious? Like, why are they lying like that? And, and also I recovered very quickly because my femoral artery got severed when I got shot in the leg. The femoral artery, for those who don't know, is like the main artery in the leg. And when it gets severed, that's the main vein and it holds a lot of blood. It runs up and down your leg. It's one big vein. And when that gets severed, you have about, T minus probably 30, 45, I don't know how long exactly to live before you bleed out. It wasn't only that, but it was my face that I was bleeding out of too. So I don't know how I didn't bleed out on the way to the hospital, but I didn't, thank God. And so when I got there, before I even woke up, they had to perform surgery on my leg. And that was actually more dire than the face injury, believe it or not, because it's a femoral artery. And so what happened was when the bullet entered my leg, it made a clean hole, 2 clean holes because it went in and out the other side. And I was bleeding out both legs, but I was losing a lot of blood, but there wasn't any place for the blood to go because it was all coming out the vein of the femoral artery. There wasn't any place for blood to go besides those 2 holes that the bullet made. And so my leg, they explained it to me, it was very swollen from all the blood being trapped in my leg. And they were considering amputating it. But they said, you know what, let's try a triple bypass. A triple bypass is where they basically cut open your leg so the blood can be released and then try to sew it back up. I don't know the details of it, but that's what they did. They cut open, and I have pictures on my Instagram of it. They cut open both sides of my leg and one big, incision on my thigh to let all the blood out. And if that didn't work for whatever reason, they would have had to amputate it because my leg was almost like, swollen to the point where it couldn't be saved. But that worked, luckily. And then they worked on my face. And they had to reconstruct my nose because from what they described, what I woke up to, which wasn't that horrible, even though I felt it was horrible because I was used to my face. But what I woke up to wasn't what they saw when I came in to the ER. Like my face, they said my face was flat. Obviously blood everywhere, but my face was flat. And my eye was even more collapsed, like it was looking down as opposed to my other eye, which was normal. But my right eye was looking down, my right eye was looking down. So they had to reconstruct everything, and I don't know how they did that. But shout out to the University, the Hospital of Penn, because they really, did their jobs. And if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't look anywhere near what I look like before. But so, I found all that out while I'm, got the tube in my mouth and all that. So I got the tube taken out. I recovered quicker than they thought, considering my injuries that I just told you about. And it got to the point where my lawyer told me that I can't walk in front of the doctors. Like, I started walking by myself. When everybody would leave, I would try to walk. Because he told me that, I might not be able to see. I might not be able to walk. And so when they left, I was like, all right, let's see. So obviously it was probably not a good choice to do that, because I could have fell and hurt myself even worse. But I didn't, luckily. And I was able to, practice walking myself. And when I showed my mom and my lawyer and my mom's boss, who came down and helped us out, they all said, you know what, we can't show the doctors this because they're going to think that you're not that injured, which I was. They saw it themselves, but they just thought that it could be used against me in court, that, I wasn't that hurt. So I don't really deserve that much money or that much sympathy or whatever the case. So when the doctors came in to help me walk again, I didn't act like I couldn't walk, but I kind of had to kind of limp a little bit to kind of sell it like I was still hurt. And not, I was limping, but I had to kind of learn to walk again in front of them, like pretend I wasn't already walking a little bit. But like I said, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I was kind of good to go by the first week, because I was just ready to go back to my life, even though I wasn't going to anytime soon. And I mean, that's mainly it. And another part of it is, a year after that, I had my first seizure, because when the bullet hit the front of my brain, it cracked my skull, the front of my skull, and some bullet fragments were left in the front of my brain. And so because those fragments, they've triggered seizures. I've had 5 since 2015, a year after it happened. And one of them was due to a surgery that I was getting. So it was kind of the anesthesia that brought on the seizure. But the other 4 happened randomly. I had no idea what was going on, no idea what brought it on. I was just sitting there. The first one, I was at my mom's house, just sitting there. They were watching Real Housewives or whatever. I was just sitting on my phone, and next thing I woke up in the ambulance, and they told me I had a seizure. I'm just like, seizure. Second one, I was driving my girlfriend somewhere. I was coming off the highway. Luckily, I wasn't on the highway anymore. Coming off the highway, boom, woke up in an ambulance, and my girlfriend tells me, or they tell me, and then my girlfriend tells me later on that I had a seizure when I was pulling into the gas station, which I don't even remember going into the gas station, but I had a seizure going into the gas station, and she saw me kind of just shake and just fall over. And third one was the day before Election Day, when Trump got elected. So I didn't get to vote. And the last one, luckily the last one was April 2018. So they were happening about every 6, 7, 8 months. And it'll be 3 years in April that one has happened. So, and because every time I had one, the first one, obviously they put me on medicine, but every time it happened, they upped the dosage to try to protect myself even further. And so hopefully I'm on the right dosage now. But, like when my daughter was born, I was scared to hold her, because she was born January 2018, and the last one was April. So even before it happened again, I was scared to hold her, because I'm just like, what if I have a seizure while I'm holding her? Luckily that never happened. But when my last seizure happened, I was at the top of the steps in my house here. I could show you, but people can't see it. But right where I'm sitting, my daughter's mother and my daughter were sitting there, watching TV or whatever, just sitting. I was going downstairs to my car, to the garage, sitting at the top of the steps, just got finished eating Popeyes, and I'm at the top of the steps talking to her. And next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance once again, and they tell me, by this time, I'm like, did I have a seizure? And then they're like, yeah, not laughing, but they're like, yeah, you had a seizure. How did you know? And I'm like, it's not the first time. And this time I fell down the steps, so I had a little cut on my cheek. But once again, God willing, it wasn't as worse as it could have been. It could have broke my neck or something like that. But like I said, it's been like 3 years, almost 3 years since that happened. And so that was a side effect of the accident. And the reason I am not in Philadelphia anymore was because when the case ended, that my lawyer told me that I should, get out of Dodge, because, if you see somebody in the news and you see that they won a lot of money, they're probably going to get bad ideas. Even not even people I know, even people I don't know that recognize me from the news might be like, stick me up or whatever. So just for precautionary measures, just to get out of there and move somewhere. So my mom had moved to Atlanta a month before the case ended. So I decided to go there. I was going to go to either LA, Texas, or Seattle. Those were my little 3 spots I was looking at. But I decided Atlanta because, Atlanta's cool. It's kind of call it the Hollywood of the South. So I figured, why not? And so that's how I ended up here. But when the case ended, my lawyer came to me and said that they wanted to settle. They didn't want to go to court, obviously, because I had nothing on my record. Didn't have any drugs because the hospital tested me after they performed. Didn't have any alcohol or marijuana or anything like that in my system. Nothing in my car, no weapons. So they literally had nothing to try to make me look bad, which is what they would have done, which is what we've seen them do to other people that have been in my situation that have died. Didn't have anything. So obviously they didn't want to go to trial and make it public, which I don't regret not making it public or going to trial with it, but I feel like sometimes I should have to bring in some awareness, but I didn't. But one thing I did say was, okay, if they want to settle, then I want to talk to them face to face. I want to sit them in the room, just us 3, because it was 2 of them, just us 3, and find out why they did what they did. Just kind of as a closure, but also to look them in the eyes. Because by this time, this is 2 years later after I got shot, that the case ended. So by this time, I've seen, 15, 20 people get shot the same way I did, but die. So now I'm just like, all right, I don't see this as 2 cops had, mistook me for somebody else and just made a mistake. This was racial profiling and a case of police brutality and possibly racism. I don't know. I can't speak on that because I don't know them. But that's why I wanted to talk to them, look them in the eye and ask them, what's up? Why did you do that? What were you thinking? And my lawyer told me that it wasn't a good idea, mainly because during my deposition, I don't know if you know what the deposition is, but that's when you go to, record your statement and tell what happened, your side of the story. In any case, that's what you do. And my lawyer told me that during my deposition, the cops that shot me were actually there at the deposition, which I don't know why. Well, I know why. They weren't supposed to be there, considering the gravity of the situation, but they decided to be there. My lawyer thinks it was for intimidation, and I believe that. But I told them the first day of the deposition, the cops were there. I walked in the lobby. I didn't know it was them. It was just 2 people that I'd never seen before. And my lawyer walked in shortly after me, about 5 minutes after, and she asked me if I was okay. And I was like, yeah, why? And she said, I just wanted to make sure because they're here. I was like, who's here? And she was like, the cops. And I look over, I'm like, the cops that did it? She's like, yeah, that's them. And I look over at them and I stare at them, just stare at their faces. And they're going upstairs to my floor to where I'm about to get my deposition. And I stare at them, both of them. And one of them stares back at me. And kind of like a movie almost, like the elevator doors are closing. He's staring at me and he stares right back at me. I'll never forget that. He stared right back at me, like almost said like he had beef with me, like he was angry with me, like I shot him or something. Stared right back at me as the elevator doors closed. And that just made me so angry. I was like, all right, let's go do it. Let's go do the deposition. I told my lawyer, because she wanted to reschedule, which we did. She wanted to reschedule. I was like, no, let's not. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to sit there and look them right in the eye while I tell the entire story, since that's what they want to do, intimidate me. I'm not one to be easily shaken like that. But my lawyer said, no, we'll reschedule because they're not supposed to be here. We rescheduled, but they were there at the second one because there was no legal precedent for them not to be there. They were technically not allowed to not be there, or however you want to say it. So they were in the room when I gave my deposition, but my lawyer said, don't look at them. Don't pretend they're not there. So that's what I did. Even though I didn't want to do that, I wanted to look at them and really have them see me, but lawyer said that's not a good idea. Don't give them any reason to say anything. And so I say all that because, like I said, the case was ending. My lawyer came to me. She said they want to just end it and pay you, whatever. I said, sure, but I want to talk to them face to face. And my lawyer said, that's not a good idea because during your deposition where they were at, while you were telling your story, at one point I looked at them and they were in the corner kind of snickering and drawing and doodling and kind of playing around while I was telling the story of how they shot me in the face. And And so that was the second indication. I told you the first one was me looking the articles up and seeing them lie about what happened. Now I see that they're laughing, or they think it's funny, or whatever it was that they were laughing about. Like if I had shot somebody and I'm at the deposition, I'm not gonna sit there and laugh. I'm gonna sit there and listen about what I did, and then apologize at some point. Which I never got an apology from them. I never got anything from them. But when I heard that, I got even more angry. But my lawyer, I don't know why. That's one thing I do regret, not pushing for that meeting, because I just wanted it to be over. But lawyer convinced me not to do that, and maybe it was a good idea. Maybe it wouldn't have been good for me to do that, but who knows? But I still regret not meeting them personally.
Be sure to check out part 2, where Phil talks about his life following this traumatic event.